OCD joins in actually right around the time I performed my first song. I was running around the house, screaming at the top of my lungs, having severe panic attacks due to my intrusive thoughts.
The song Samantha, your frenemy ode to OCD.
The song starts with the phrase, "It's been the longest sleepover of my life."
It's been the longest sleepover of my life.
Since I've been 10, I've been having a sleepover with this voice in my head. I've learned to appreciate that despite how hellish it can make my life, I really think my OCD has really good intentions. It just thinks it's helping and is actually just making a mess in the kitchen. This is gonna sound so corny, but you can do whatever you want to do with OCD. I have OCD. I am actively pursuing my career in music, doing the thing I love the most in the world. I've had 50 million OCD spirals about my music career. I'm still here.
Welcome once again, everyone, to another episode of the Get to Know OCD podcast. My name is Patrick McGrath. I'm the Chief Clinical Officer for NOCD. If you're looking for help for OCD or related conditions, you can check us out at NOCD.com, where we have expert therapists ready and waiting to meet with you to help you with OCD and related conditions. And if you like the Get to Know OCD podcast, hey, check us out anywhere you get your favorite podcasts or subscribe to the NOCD YouTube channel. Now today, because I have fun with music. Music is my thing. You've all seen on my webinars my Rush bobbleheads, my favorite band in the entire world, you know, my ode to my Canadian brothers and sisters. Even though I'm not Canadian, but I feel like one. But anyway, I'll stop talking about me because Nicole, hello! How are you today? Nicole Sophia, singer, songwriter, new album out, Reveal Yourself. Just tell us about you and the work you've been doing.
Hi, I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you for that warm introduction. I'm doing great today. I just finished up teaching music, which is part of what I do, and I'm like really super pumped to get to be here and with NOCD talking about my experience and hopefully inspiring and helping other people in the process.
Did you invite Samantha today? I'm just curious.
Not invited, but she always kind of tags along whether or not I invite her. It was very funny. I was like watching myself get riled up before the interview and being like, of course my OCD is going to kick in before the OCD interview, and like wouldn't be my OCD without it.
Really wouldn't be, actually. No, we'd have to consider if you had something else, actually, if that was the case. Why wouldn't it rile up? And Samantha is what you call your OCD, just for the inside joke there that we have. And there's a great song that we're going to talk about a little bit later today that I love, that you called Samantha, and is kind of a not so ode to your OCD, as we shall call it. Yeah. Yes, because it could just go away, right? We don't really need it around or anything like that. Yeah,
but I've also I've learned to appreciate that despite how hellish it can make my life, I really think, like a misguided kid, my OCD has really good intentions. It just thinks it's helping and is actually just making a mess in the kitchen. Like that's.
I couldn't agree more. Actually, I have described OCD as it thinks it's helpful. It's just not at all. But it's almost a frenemy in some ways, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
The other thing that I think, and I'll want to talk about this because, and you've probably heard this, once you say you have OCD, I'm going to bet many people say, oh, I have a little bit of that as well.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes, I get that a lot. I got the one that I got often. It was like, I don't have OCD, I have CDO because I need to put the letters in order. And I was like, okay, Caitlin, just because your room is clean doesn't mean you have OCD. Like, my room is notoriously a disaster, and I for sure 100% have OCD. So it really the conceptions and the portrayal of OCD in the media versus like the lived experience of what it's like to have it, and all the different varietals, like, and especially the less glamorous and the more like mental compulsion insidious varietals of OCD are something that like I didn't get to hear much about growing up and was very much has very much been my experience with OCD. So it's been nice to get to make art around that and talk about it and share it in a really like authentic and confident way.
Yeah. I've even sadly seen that in professionals where I've had members who have said, well, I was told I couldn't have OCD because my house was messy. And the professional told me everyone with OCD has a clean house. And I'm like, no, not true. Not true at all. And you are living proof of that, it appears, with your messy houses.
I am living proof. My mom, bless her heart, when I was like 13, she was like, I really wish you just had the kind of OCD where your room was clean. And I was like, I wish I didn't have it at all, but
there you go.
I love that for you.
Yeah, great answer. But can we dispel a myth right away, if you wouldn't mind? Because some people think, if I just had a little OCD, that would be so helpful. And I'm going to bet you would disagree with that statement.
I would very strongly disagree with that statement. All of my experience with OCD is that while it tries to be helpful, it tends to get in the way of things that would otherwise be more effective and more efficient. Like, I do a lot of recording videos for music and music promotion. And if my OCD wasn't there, I think I would have started doing that music promotion a lot sooner, and I would have done it with a lot more ease and like confidence and without nitpicking like, oh, well, if I didn't get that completely right, then no one's going to ever listen to it and I'm going to mess it up. And then I'm going to take my career because that one video, or they're going to all like track back and see that I can't actually sing or I don't know what I'm doing. And it's like, when the actual reality is I'm really good at what I do. And if I just was able to get a little bit more out of my own way, if the OCD was able to move a little bit more to the side, I'd be putting myself out there more and probably doing better.
Yeah. I've even seen that in one of your videos where there's you in the blue and then you in the red dress, and the differences between the two of you of here's not so confident me, and here's just if this is confident me, and you really play off the juxtaposition there incredibly well. I really enjoyed that very much.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm. I hope that's what you're going for, and that I didn't botch that up totally. Because
oh no, you did not. You did not botch that. And the music video director would be very happy with that assessment, and the whole creative team would say that's great. So
no, it came through to me. It really, really did, and I think what an interesting piece, because a lot of times people with OCD have maybe this outside presentation, and then there's this inside experience. And I'm betting that's you on a daily basis in many ways.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I have the outside very bubbly. I mean, in my core, I'm a happy, excited, very joyful human being. And then there's a voice in my head that kind of exists critiquing what I'm doing. And that's very much an OCD voice a lot of the time.
Yeah. It's the worst critic too, right? I mean, because it cuts to the core of so many things. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the voice in your head knows you better than anyone, so it's going to know exactly how to decimate your self-esteem better than anyone else could.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Shut up, Samantha. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. Tell us your journey into music. How did it all start? This prodigy that you... No, I don't know if you are, but yes, I was born playing Beethoven.
Oh, that would be lovely. No, I did apparently know all the deep cuts to the nursery rhymes. Like, I could give you a 7-minute rendition of Wheels on the Bus when I was 2, which is a very fun anecdote my grandparents love to tell. But I actually don't come from a particularly musical family. My immediate family is very tone deaf. The one thing I got from any of my immediate family members surrounding music is my dad's ability to memorize lyrics. I can memorize lyrics impeccably. He can't sing on time or on tempo or on pitch. So I'm very grateful I didn't get that. But yes. I'm very grateful that I got the part of the brain that remembers. But from a really young age, I always turned to music and specifically songwriting to process what was going on internally for me. So I think I was as young as first grade when I started writing music. And like, I think I performed one of my songs live for people for the first time, original song, when I was in 4th grade. And from there, writing has always been my favorite way to honestly get through all of the complexity and nuance and ambiguity. Ooh, that took me a second. Ambiguity in my brain. And it's the one space where I actually like when things are ambiguous and messy, because as people with OCD brains know, we tend to not like ambiguity and like really clear answers. But I found that when I'm writing, being a messy human being is way more compelling than being a human being that has it completely together. And when I have time and space to write, it helps me make sense of everything that's going on and makes it feel like everything that I'm feeling not only clicks for me, but can be of service to other people.
Sure. Makes me wonder, have you met a human being that has it all together yet? Because I still haven't in all 25 years of treating people, but maybe you have. I don't know if that's.
I have absolutely not. And
okay, wonderful. Good.
Yeah,
thought I was missing out for a moment there.
Oh no! But I always had the expectation that I'm supposed to be the one exception to the rule that does have everything together, because, of course, I'm special and it's me, and I have to be the only perfect human.
One thing I've said, and maybe this will resonate with you, I've said that OCD says to be equal to everyone, I have to be here.
Yes,
right?
That totally resonates.
I got to be better than you to be equal to you. And if I'm equal to you, sure, I'm worse than you.
Mm-hmm. And that is a brutal one in general, and especially brutal as like an up and coming artist, watching myself and like the comparison with peers of like, okay, in order to be equal, I have to be better. So the pressure that you put yourself under is just immense.
And you use a word that I use all the time. I use a phrase that I call specialness. The rules of the world apply to me differently than everybody else. It's fine for everyone else to do that, but if I do it, it's terrible.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, okay, 4th grade, you're doing this debut yourself here, and where does OCD come into the life? You've got the singing, the songwriting, the playing, but when does OCD join on the wheels on the bus part of it as well?
So OCD joins in actually right around the time I performed my first song. So I was diagnosed starting to show symptoms end of 4th grade. I started really showing symptoms in 5th grade. And my symptoms, I think honestly, looking at it now very much to my benefit, were like glaring and obvious and undeniable. Like I was running around the house screaming at the top of my lungs, having severe panic attacks due to my intrusive thoughts. And like it was pretty, in some ways, lucky, because I think OCD can be so insidious and so hidden, especially if you're someone like me that has mainly mental compulsions, that the fact that mine exhibit in a very external way initially, I think really helped me in the long run, like get into treatment and get it taken care of. So in some ways, I'm very grateful for that, but it was also absolutely terrifying to have such intense thoughts, so they would lead me to literally running around the house screaming.
Yeah. Wow. So you get diagnosed. How does that happen? How do you finally go and figure that out?
So I was my mom's a doctor, so I also lucked out in that way. So I was pretty open and honest with my parents about what was going on. So I was having really intense, intrusive thoughts about death and fears of death and like perpetual, like the loop cycle on that. And then through that, my OCD then shifted into suicidal intrusive thoughts. And I was just so scared of what was going on in my brain. And like, even at 10, I knew I was like, wow, this is not me. Like, this is not how I feel. I am happy. I love my life. I don't know why I have these scary thoughts. I don't know why I have this voice in my head telling me that I don't like my life and that I should off myself and all of these things. So I was scared and had adults that I trusted. So I told them what was going on. And I got put into therapy and treatment, starting to work through that. I mean, it was starting with a diagnosis, but I think the diagnosis ended up being relatively clear. I don't actually remember. I remember the thoughts vividly, because that was the scary part. I don't fully remember the experience of getting diagnosed, other than I remember getting diagnosed and I remember being really relieved, because when I got diagnosed, I was like, oh, thank God, this isn't me. Like, this isn't my fault. And it's not my voice. It's not my brain. Like, there's something outside of my control that's doing this, and that felt really reassuring.
Yeah, that relief happens for so many people when they realize they are not their thoughts. They are not the images in their head. They are not the urges that they are experiencing, that we all have them. That's a normal, natural human experience, but people with OCD read so much more deep into it than people without OCD do.
Yeah.
When does OCD then start to jump into screwing with the thing you love, singing, songwriting, video production? Because OCD does love to crap on a parade as much as possible. So if your parade is music, OCD, I'm thinking, is going to go after it pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so for a long time, because my OCD presented in such like a vivid and intense way initially, once I kind of worked through and did a lot of like healing around the specific, like really intense intrusive thoughts around fear of death and suicidality and like things like that, I kind of thought my OCD went away. And then as I got older, I was learning more and more about mental compulsions and all these different things that are more invisible and more insidious. And it wasn't honestly until like maybe a year ago that I had the words to describe that perfectionistic voice in my brain, because I thought I just really, really cared. And that I cared so much,
Sure.
and that I was doing so much, and I wanted to make sure it was good and it was perfect and that it was everything was good because this is what I love and this is my passion.
Yeah.
And then in watching more people talk about OCD and learning more about the different subtypes of OCD, I processed that essentially this degree in which I am analyzing and spinning about every single detail is not only not normal, but it's detrimental to what I'm doing. And my OCD Samantha really tricked me. She tricked me and made me think that she was like on my side, and this is just the mentality I needed to have in order to succeed. And I've realized more and more, especially recently, that actually when I can notice that and when that perfectionism OCD is coming up, if I can name it as such and then move forward from there, naming and moving past the OCD actually makes me a lot more effective at following what I want to do and doing the things that I want to do with excellence instead of perfectionism.
And can I just say, how dare you, Samantha, try to get in the way of this future Emmy award-winning, Grammy award-winning, Tony award-winning, and every other award-winning artist that
Give me the EGOT. Yeah.
Yeah, the EGOT goes to Nicole Sophia, by the way. Yes, congratulations. But yeah, I mean, isn't it doesn't it suck, right? That you can experience so much joy and so much pain potentially about the exact same thing when OCD wants to get involved.
Oh, completely. And it's like the pain that comes with it. It's like, writing and performing are the thing that I love the most in the world. And Samantha is right there with me on stage, like analyzing the notes, tracking what I'm doing. And I simultaneously feel the most like myself and the most comfortable on stage than I pretty much ever feel in my life. Sure. And also the most self-conscious and most hyper-aware. And it's a very weird feeling and a weird contrast to have those coexist and be like, both can be true. And how do I acknowledge the fact that I feel so self-conscious and so self-aware and I'm picking myself apart while also really veering towards and choosing to lean into the feeling of loving what I'm doing.
I think that'll really resonate with a lot of people listening because it almost feels like there's two parts of me going on at the same time. This internal battle, this Jekyll and Hyde kind of experience, maybe Nicole and Samantha experience, shall we say, where you can be going into something and the angel and the devil are on your shoulder competing with each other for all of the attention in this experience, right?
Oh, yeah.
The song Samantha then is kind of your frenemy ode to OCD, as I was thinking about it as I was listening to it. Could you tell us a little bit about it, and the inspiration obviously is your life with OCD, but what brought in, like, why certain lyrics and others, or are there any that just, and again, as personal as you want to get. This is not an online therapy session by any means, but
I'm a notorious oversharer, so there's nothing you're going to ask me that I won't give an honest answer to.
But I'd be really interested, like, just, I think some of the stories in it, and especially we'll put a link in so people can listen to it, and I think it will really resonate. But I wonder if you could just describe how certain things made it into the song and what those things mean to you.
Oh, definitely. So the song starts with the phrase, "It's been the longest sleepover of my life." And to me, that line is important for several reasons. I mean, since I've been 10, I've been having a sleepover with this voice in my head that's been keeping me up all night when I want to go to sleep, and, would draw on my face, metaphorically speaking, if I tried to go to bed and when it didn't want me to. And that line is also important to me because when I was first diagnosed, I wasn't allowed to go to sleepovers for a little while because sleep deprivation would make my OCD significantly worse. And you can imagine being 10 years old, having OCD, it already sucks, right? Having OCD at any age already sucks, but especially as a kid. And then not being able to go to a sleepover with your friends, but being forced to have this sleepover with this voice in your head that you hate. So that was the first line that popped into my head. And when that line popped up, I knew I had the song. And there's, in that first verse, there's also the line of, "I cling to my phone as a nightlight so I don't have to hear my thoughts." And for me, one of the coping mechanisms that I developed when I was 13 or 14 is I'd start listening to, honestly, comfort TV shows. So I could key into that when I was falling asleep and not have to listen to the loop track that was going on in my head.
Distraction.
And exactly. And of course, I've had 50 million OCD thoughts about oh, well, if I fall asleep with the phone next to my head, I'm going to be programming my brain weird and I'm going to be messing up the way that I think. And of course, the phone is going to give me cancer in some way, shape, or form, right? All the things that I'm this is the thing that I need to do to support myself to fall asleep. So there's that whole feeling behind it. There's also a lot of imagery around knives in the lyrics. And specifically, there's a line of, "I promise the knives aren't invitations." And I wrote that line because when I was having suicidal ideation and intrusive thoughts, knives were a really big part of that. And one of the things I had to do for CBT was sit at the kitchen table with all of the knives pointing towards me for exposure therapy. And that was a brutal experience to have at 11. But sitting there and, I think about it today, right? I'm still a huge fan of knives, but I worked in kitchens a lot when I was younger and all these things. And I can cut an apple by myself and not worry about it. And
there you go.
Those are things that I couldn't do when I was younger. And so I get to track the progress that I have. And there's a lot of lines in the songs that really deal with things that I was doing as far as compulsions or therapy treatments. There's a line, "orange juice in obituary pages." And one of the things that I had to do for exposure therapy was read through obituary pages about a little bit of desensitization. And then a big one, which I think we'll talk about with the clip, is I use the metaphor of the TV a lot. Because to me, my experience with OCD has been a lot like having a video stuck on loop in my head. And when I'm done with it, my brain will rewind and it keeps going back and it keeps going back. And it's dude, I've seen this movie. I've reviewed the game tape. There's nothing I can do to change it. I already know the lines by heart. It is 2 a.m. The TV is so bright and I just want to go to sleep. And so using a lot of that stuff. And the interesting thing about why I started writing Samantha is it would be safe to assume that I was having a panic attack and that's what inspired me to write it. But what inspired me to write it was actually, I was in my first relationship and I'd been waiting to be in a relationship for so long and I was so excited. And all of a sudden my OCD Samantha was just picking apart every single little detail of this new relationship. And it was like, oh, do you like them enough? Does he even like you? Do you care about them enough? Like, what, anything that could go wrong or I could be at fault for, it was just decimating this really wonderful thing. And I was so frustrated in that moment. And I just started thinking back to like all the ways my OCD has impacted my life since I've been diagnosed, and all like the beautiful moments that I feel like it's not stolen because I still got to have them, but kind of colored and tainted. And I wanted to have that catharsis and expression, but the song also ends up in a place of compassion, which to me has been the thing that's honestly supported me the most with my OCD. Because initially I was like told to like push it away and like try and like reject it. And I found that like actually accepting my OCD and coming at it from a place of love. And again, like we were talking about earlier, like trusting that it has good intentions, even though the suggestions that it's making are heinous, was the thing that really made a difference in my experience with OCD. So I try and kind of have the song highlight all of the true like horror and frustration that my experience was, but also ending it with like showing my OCD that compassion that I do have for it despite the frustration.
Cool. Well, why don't we do a little clip of Samantha here, and let's let the audience hear a bit of it. I think it'll be really great.
It's been the longest sleepover of my life. When are you packing your bags to go? Samantha, you've kept me up all night since I was 10 years old. With your whispers of scary stories, my nightmares became my daydreams. I wanna wake up, so I cling to my phone as a nightlight, so I don't have to hear my thoughts. Samantha, can we get some sleep? We can talk about the world ending in the morning. You can tear apart my hopes and dreams and tell me more about how we're slowly dying. We can do it over egg whites and bank statements, orange juice and obituary pages. I promise the knives aren't invitations. In the morning we'll be fine. Samantha, can we get some sleep tonight? Samantha held my hand on field trips and at parties growing up, and when the time came, she clung to my side during young love.
That's awesome. So much imagery, that even just the hair, right? And can you even braid your hair right while you're, and of course, once Samantha kicks in and does one thing, everything else probably seems impossible to do, because even the smallest little task becomes huge and has to be just right. Am I getting it right, what you're trying to portray there?
Oh yeah, I mean, awesome. Just like the perfection if it doesn't end up being right. And like I don't want to be sitting here rebraiding my hair for 45 minutes. Like, this is not what I want to be doing with my life. I have things to be doing, and I don't want to be sitting here reviewing the same thought over and over and over again. And I don't want to be this freaked out. And like, yeah, the feeling of repetition and this like frustration and helplessness and feeling like you should be able to control it. And it's, yeah, I mean, I'm really grateful for the whole team that made the music video, because I think they translated the song into such powerful imagery that really, really reflects like what my experience with having OCD has been like.
Did it feel real good just to bat a TV like that too? I mean, was that pretty awesome? Or
it was deeply fun. I mean, honestly, when they were like, we get to smash the TV, I was like, I'm so prepared. I have a lot of rage. If this TV is my OCD, you best believe I'm gonna whack it. But also there was the OCD of like, we only have 2 TVs. What if I smash what if I mess up the shot? Even in that moment of like, I get to hit this TV, there's still the voice in your head.
Yeah. if it even goes similar. Jeff Bell, who's a friend of mine, has a book out on OCD, and he was in media, and he talks around, rewind, repeat, all these things so very, very similar types of things. And it is interesting for people I've interviewed who are in media, who really talk about that whole experience of, did I get it right? Did I say it right? Did I have the meaning right? Did I portray it right? What if, what if, what if, what if? How much of your life has been controlled by the phrase, what if?
Oh gosh. I mean, if I did the calculation, I'm sure I'd be deeply upset. And it happened it's, what if people misinterpret this lyric? What if I say something in this video where I'm talking about my experience with OCD, where what I say somehow harms someone else, even though I'm trying to be helpful? Like, what if people misinterpret the story or the meaning behind this song? What if somehow I offend someone, or I have big harm OCD. Like, what if I cause someone harm with what I'm doing, when my whole intention with pretty much everything I do is to help people feel seen and make the world a better place. And that what if has stopped me from reaching out to friends who I thought were hurting because I was scared that I was going to reach out wrong. That what if has stopped me from sending career-changing emails. That what if has stopped me from reaching out to friends and potential partners. And so much of that what if has impacted my life.
Yeah. And OCD is always what if followed by the worst case scenario. I've never once had someone say, what if everyone loves me and thinks I'm great? Treated no one for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. The idea, and it's interesting, sometimes things just meld. And so one of our writers at NOCD reached out to me today and said, why do intrusive thoughts seem to happen a lot at night? And then I start playing your song, and it's the this crappy sleepover that you're on and everything. And I'm like, well, isn't that just fast? 2 people within an hour have just brought this up. Some people will describe waking up, it's the worst, and it gets better through the day. Some people will talk about, I feel really strong in the morning, but as the day goes on, I get weaker. How is it for you with OCD? Do you have a time, a spot where it really just likes to get itself in there at you?
Yeah, so my OCD time of day wise generally started initially in evenings. It would be
Okay.
because during the day I was having these activities and I was doing things and I was pretty involved in life. And it was the second my brain got quiet is when Samantha would be like, I have something to say. I was like, no one asked. Can we just chill and be quiet? It's an interesting thing for me as a creative because there's a lot of wonderful things that happens when my brain goes into that quiet space and I allow it to be there. So much wonderful creation can come out of it. But for a long period of time, I really didn't want to sit in the quiet at all because a lot of what it would be filled with would be these really scary thoughts. And so for me, it tended to happen more at night. And I can also, it's not as much time of day, but I can track my OCD with how much I've eaten a certain day. And if I'm behind calorically, my OCD is a lot worse. Obviously if I haven't slept and so a lot of things are if I start getting anxious or if I start having intrusive thoughts, my first checklist is what is the last time I ate? How much sleep did I get? Mm-hmm. When is the last time I did something that was a creative outlet for me? Because a lot of the time if I'm not being creative and energy gets pent up, then my OCD will start spinning its own stories instead of if I'm taking control and writing songs and writing stories myself. And right with the sleep thing, how much sleep did I get? There's not much I can do in the middle of the day to change that, but I can at least say, okay, I know I'm feeling this way because of these factors. And that allows me to have more compassion for myself when I'm experiencing those things, which gives me some more space around it.
This may shock people, but it's actually okay to be nice to yourself. Is that what you're telling us in your statements there?
And it's okay to be nice to yourself, and this might be even more shocking. I find the nicer I am to myself, the easier time I have moving on from things that I would tend to get stuck on. I'm someone that gets stuck in if I'm having a thought or a feeling that I don't want to be having, I'm someone who used to in the past like beat myself up and be like, just stop, like, why are you having this thought? Like, this is supposed to be a fun thing. We're supposed to be enjoying this self. And the thing that I've been doing recently has been like, okay, I'm having these thoughts that I'm really not enjoying. I'm going to be having these thoughts until I'm not. I'm like, it sucks, and I accept it. And it tends to happen that when I do that, the thoughts go away a hell of a lot faster than when I'm actively trying to fight them. And it's the same approach that I have with my OCD of like, okay, I accept that Samantha's here right now. And instead of trying to push her away and saying, get out of my head, it's like, okay, you're here. You're going to be here. Like, you can be in the car with me. You don't get to drive. Like, but I'm not going to try and kick you out anymore. And the more I do that, the more she tends to chill out.
There's another line about dissecting your interactions so you'll never make a mistake again. I think one of the lies of OCD is that you can be perfect. And I know this swings back to some things we were talking about earlier, but do you think you could ever achieve what Samantha told you you needed to achieve? Would it even be possible?
No, and
No.
I don't think I could ever achieve what my OCD wants me to achieve in that standard. And I'd actually go a step further of, I think if I was the person that my OCD wanted me to be, I'd be really boring and like really insufferable to be around. Like, because if I was the person my OCD wanted me to be, I would be my OCD. And everyone with OCD knows OCD is like not a fun companion, right? And the really interesting thing, like, that I've gotten to explore. So when I look back on the whole album, Reveal Your Heart, which is the album that Samantha's on, there's a lot of OCD within the song lyrics that exists outside of Samantha. Like, you can very clearly see that I have OCD, that it exists within the music. And the cool thing is, like, right now I'm working on another album, and this album is all about my exploration of like, okay, what if I live life in a non-perfect way and I start making mistakes? Like, let's see what's going to happen. And reorienting to being like kind of almost defiant of that OCD voice instead of trying to placate it, and being like, actually, let's see what happens if instead of being black or white, I'm a rainbow. Let's see what happens if I'm an imperfect, messed up, messy human. And what I found is like, I'm still a good person. I've gotten through every challenging situation. I've dealt with every mistake that I've made in this whole like exploration process. And I've gotten some really cool insights about myself and some really cool art from it. And like, to me, that's the best thing.
That is awesome, right? I mean, if we can't be perfect, why not celebrate it, right? Instead of beat ourselves up for it.
Definitely.
Because I see no reason to be angry about something that I can't achieve.
Yeah. And I think people that are imperfect are a lot more interesting.
Mm-hmm. When you look back, you've got obviously a mix of the mental compulsions, the physical compulsions. You've described some of the exposures of with therapists sitting with knives and everything. How have you managed then to be exposed to the mental compulsions and do some good response prevention to not give in to those anymore?
That's a great question. I think, honestly, I've been still in the process of figuring out what mental compulsions are for me, because I became more aware of it recently, because I think my initial intrusive thoughts and compulsions were so obvious.
Sure.
Like, now when I look at the more subtle things and the ways that I've been working with it so far are as simple as it sounds, just naming the fact that it's OCD when it's OCD. So when my perfectionism is kicking up while I'm filming a video, I'm like, okay, this is my OCD. And even that disarms the fact that I need to be doing whatever that voice in my head is saying. And I've worked through a lot of different forms of therapy. Honestly, I know it doesn't work for everyone, but in my personal experience, like with my experience with OCD, faith has been a really big part of it, of just like when I'm being really controlling with myself, having a higher power and conception of God that I trust, and believe me, I've had a million things of OCD about what that higher power should be, and that higher power is shifted and shaped and all the things, right? Any freak out thought about that I have had. And just for when I'm really, really in it, being able to say, okay, these thoughts in my head, this situation I can't control, this thing, like, I give it over to something outside myself, creates a little bit of spaciousness. I'm like, sometimes, right, I've also swung the opposite direction. If I had a period of time in my life where I compulsively prayed and, like, I didn't know I was doing it when I was doing it, and, like, looking back on it, I was like, oh, okay, like, that wasn't super helpful. And, like, that, and I mean, I've done a bunch of different types of therapy. I did talk therapy. I've done internal family systems. I've done CBT. I mean, like, I've been working on myself for a long time because this voice in my head kind of jump started that process.
Sure.
But yeah,
I think you've also showed the healing power of art and expression that so many people can identify with or through as a means to get somewhere that they want to go.
oh, definitely. I mean, even for me, like being able to write everything down that's going in my head and make it into something like authentic and real and beautiful, and being able to take like what would be just like spinning about a cycle. Because like really when I'm writing a song to answer a question about something that's going on in my head. And a lot of times it's a topic or situation that I'm spinning about and I haven't been able to let go of. And being able to like, actually sometimes the fact that the situation can play over and over and over again in my head can be really helpful for writing, because I'm like, oh yeah, I'm very vividly aware of what the situation is, and I can hone in on it and like move it through. And then being able to write about it and put it out of thought into like, I think for me, songwriting bridges the gap of what would only exist in my brain. I have to then feel it in order to be able to translate it into words and melodies and articulate it. And that to me is the immeasurable gift of being an artist, and how it supports me in dealing with my brain chemistry, the world, like you name it. Like it's truly exceptional. It's helped me more than pretty much anything, and it's definitely saved my ass. Like,
How do you hope that then relates to the people who listen to what you've written?
gosh, I mean, in particular, I hope that the people who listen to Samantha, especially the people that have OCD, feel really seen first and foremost, and like whether or not they share the same experiences with their OCD that I've had, or they can insert their own, like knowing that they're not alone and having those really intense experiences and frustrations. Like, I know how important it was to me to see art, to see people that I looked up to and admired that were open and honest about their mental health. And I hope it feels good to see a realistic portrayal of this within art, because I've seen so many unrealistic portrayals of OCD that made me feel more isolated and alone. And so I'm hoping sharing my really honest portrayal of that can help people feel seen and loved and supported. And I like more broadly, I hope it helps more people understand like what is going on for us when we say we're experiencing OCD. Like people that have never had it, I hope this song makes it make more sense. When I say I'm caught in OCD spiral, that could mean nothing to a random stranger. But if they hear this song and they see the music video and they understand the imagery, like sure, they might not have felt the thing that we're feeling, but they have this sense, and I'm hoping that it breeds compassion. And also, like, I'm hoping that it inspires people with OCD and people everywhere to know that you can do really cool and amazing things, not only in spite of, but with accepting and embracing the experiences that you've had with OCD. And for me, it's been embracing my OCD and my creative process in songwriting, but I know a lot of people have other ways that when they've embraced their OCD, it's really opened the world up and like found a way to make it even bigger and brighter and better, which I know can feel like an insane sentence to say when you're in the throes of OCD sometimes. But I think going through OCD processes and treatment has made me so much more aware of myself and the world and what other people are going through, what I'm going through. And being so aware of my own internal system has made me an excellent writer.
Fantastic. If I don't ask this next question, my producer will yell at me. So I'm going to ask the question. Where does the name Samantha come from?
Okay, so as the name Samantha comes from an interaction that I happened to have with neuroscientist Dan Siegel when I was 10. And that's kind of a very weird flex, but I met him. My mom was speaking at a conference with him, so I lucked out in that regard. And I had just been diagnosed with OCD. And Dan Siegel, was explaining to me in 10-year-old language how OCD works. And what he explained to me is that you have a part of your brain called the scan alert mechanism, called SAM, that is like the overactive OCD mind. So your scan alert mechanism is overactive. And this is how he described it to me. And so when I was thinking about, I got the advice to name and befriend the OCD voice in my head. And so when I was trying to think of a name, I remembered Sam. But I was a 10-year-old girl, and while I'm like, Sam was a little bit too boyish for me at the time. So I decided, okay, I'm going to name my OCD Samantha. So it came from that interaction.
You know, I've heard something similar in the terms of what you're talking about, scan alert, where people without OCD can have so many things going on, and many of them just pass them by and kind of go in the doesn't need too much attention world. But there's a few things that will get in the attention side. And people with OCD, almost everything goes down the this needs a lot of attention side. Does that sound kind of familiar to you in describing it that
definitely.
Way? Yeah.
And like, it's always the things that don't actually need the most attention, and the things that really do need the attention get kind of passed by, at least in my brain.
Right. Yeah. Yes. I've seen that in like people who are afraid they've run someone over, who should be watching where the car is going and instead are looking in the mirror and doing this to see if they've run someone over. And now they've just increased the chance of the thing they're afraid of happening by paying no attention to the fact that they're moving forward but looking behind them as they're doing it. Yeah. So
oh my gosh, that is such an apt metaphor for how my brain functions.
Well, before we close out, what is the message that you want to share with our listeners who might be struggling with OCD, their own mental health concerns, as a way to just inspire them to move into that next level? Maybe it's treatment, maybe it's just opening up to someone about it, maybe it's just admitting that I might have an issue.
Yeah. The first thing I'm going to say about what I want to say to people as far as inspiration goes is going to sound really counterintuitive. But the first thing I want to tell you is, if you're going through this, I know how much this sucks and I'm sorry. And I want to acknowledge that you're going through something hard. And like, I don't want to sugarcoat that. Because I know that it's really difficult. And with acknowledging that it's hard and it sucks, I also want to acknowledge that you are brave enough, strong enough, self-aware enough to do the work to get through it. And that doesn't mean it's always going to be fun. And that doesn't mean that like living with OCD is the world's greatest joy. I'd be like, wow, I wish that everyone had OCD, right? But I do firmly believe that there are gifts that I've gotten out of having OCD, because it led me to be so self-aware, and it led me to have such an arsenal of ways to like really get to know myself and learn how to take care of myself and learn all these things. And it's helped me be more articulate to my loved ones and people in the world because I've had to learn how to explain my brain. But like learning how to explain what's going on internally is something that's served me really well in my friendships and relationships and in podcast interviews. And like, there are a million ways that OCD makes life hard, and no one's going to deny that. At least I'm certainly not. There are probably people in the world that would deny that, but they don't get it, and they're not that important. And this is going to sound so corny, but you can do whatever you want to do with OCD. Like, I have OCD. I am actively pursuing my career in music, doing the thing I love the most in the world. I've had 50 million OCD spirals about my music career. I'm still here. I'm still doing it. I'm putting out music. I'm signed to a record label. I was diagnosed when I was 10. I am 24 and I am adulting and I pay my own bills and I get by with life, and I have amazing friends and relationships in my life, and I have people that truly love and care about and understand me. And some days I have a really hard time with my brain, and some days my brain is the coolest thing in the entire world. And all in all, I definitely wouldn't change how it works. And I'm grateful to be the person that I am, and I am the person that I am with having OCD. And you are the person you are with having OCD if you have it.
Well, thank you so much for that. You heard it here first, everyone. Future EGOT winner, Nicole Sophia, on her Get to Know OCD podcast interview, spouting some amazingly awesome advice and inspiration. So, Nicole, thank you so much today. I really appreciate the time with you. It was quite a joy to chat.
Thank you so much for having me. And I really, really appreciate being here.
And if you liked what you heard today, you can, listen to more of it. You can go to the Get to Know OCD podcast NOCD page, and you can subscribe on NOCD's page for that. And if you're looking for help for obsessive compulsive disorder or related conditions, and you want to work with a therapist who's been expertly trained in exposure and response prevention therapy and other evidence-based treatments for OCD and related conditions, go to NOCD.com. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again in the future.